The question is, if I buy $25,000 of a stock at $55 per share and $10,000 of the same stock at $57 per share, what is the average cost of one share of stock from these two different purchases? And as you may know, the general formula for figuring out the average cost of something comes down to dividing how much money you paid by how many units you purchased. In this example, the easiest part is knowing how much money you paid total for all of the stock shares. And that total paid is $35,000, which you get when you add the $25,000 you paid for the stock at $55 per share to the $10,000 you paid for the stock at $57 per share. So the amount of money paid for all of the stocks is $35,000. This $35,000 amount can now be put into the average cost formula. The $35,000 represents how much all the stocks were purchased for, both those stocks that were purchased at $55 per share and those purchased for $57 per share. The total paid for all of them was $35,000. And now you just need to know how many units you purchased, and then you can figure out the average cost paid per stock share. Now, to find out how many total units you purchased, you need to find out how many units you purchased at $55 per share and how many units you purchased at $57 per share, and then add them together, and you'll have the total number of shares purchased. Let's figure out how many shares were purchased for $55 per share. If $25,000 was used to purchase stock at $55 per share, I can take $25,000 and divide it by 55 to get the number of shares purchased for $55 per share. And the answer is 455 shares. Actually, the answer is 454.545454 and so on, but I rounded it to 455. And now let's figure out how many shares were purchased for $57 per share. If $10,000 was used to purchase the stock at $57 per share, I can take $10,000 and divide it by $57 to get the number of shares purchased for $57 per share. The rounded answer is 175 shares. 175 shares were purchased for $10,000 at $57 per share. Now we have all we need to complete the average cost formula. We know that $35,000 was used to buy shares of a stock. $25,000 of that $35,000 was used to buy 455 shares of the stock at a cost of $55 per share. And $10,000 of that $35,000 was used to buy 175 shares of the stock at a price of $57 per share. To complete the average cost formula, we just need to know how many units were purchased for $35,000. And we can do that by adding the 455 shares purchased for $55 per share to the 175 shares purchased for $57 per share. The total number of shares purchased for $35,000 is 630 shares. Now that we have the total amount paid and the total number of shares purchased, the average cost per share can be determined by dividing the $35,000 paid by the 630 shares purchased, and the average cost per share is $55.55. The average cost per share can be expressed also like this without breaking it down into the individual steps I showed you before. Here you have on the top the $25,000 that was used to purchase stock at $55 per share, added to the $10,000 that was used to purchase stock at $57 per share. And on the bottom of the equation, you have in parentheses the two equations that find out how many shares you purchased for $55 a share and how many you purchased for $57 a share. Doing it all this way, you can plug it all into a calculator, making sure to follow the proper order of math operations, and you'll avoid the rounding errors you might encounter by breaking it all down into individual steps. The answer I got from the calculator can be rounded to $55.56. I hope this helps.